Hello and welcome to another edition of the Cardiff Central podcast. In the hot seat is me, Harley, and I'm joined by Dan this week. No Carwyn because he's just still in shock of Dan's one absolutely miraculous half marathon time. So, Dan, just quickly, how was the half marathon?
Yeah, it was really good. Obviously, I class myself as like a top level elite athlete now, so I can really discuss professional rugby at a top level. No, yeah, it's obviously a hard event, but it's really good. Cardiff put on the half marathon really well. Loads of people come out, really good course. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it to anybody who's got half an inkling of wanting to stretch the legs every now and again. That the Cardiff half in particular is a good one to go for.
There you go. Excellent. So, excellent stuff. So, obviously, we're here to talk about rugby, Cardiff rugby in particular. So, let's start off with the Rags versus Cardiff Quins, Carmarthen Quins, even. Sorry, Cardiff Quins on the brain. They after what they did to us bastards.
Yeah, I mean, a good, great place to start with the Rags because 50-0 they beat Carmarthen on Saturday, having lost to them at Carmarthen Park the week before. I was at the game on Saturday and I still can't really describe what happened. We started well, um, pretty much spent 30 odd minutes camped in their 22, scored a couple of tries, not as many as we should have been. I think we'd had it was 21-0 about 30 minutes in, but we should have had bonus point wrapped up by then, the amount of time we were there and the amount of ball we spilled. Then Nathan Hood gets sent off for, well, I suspect it'll say headbutt on the disciplinary form. It was more of a head-to-head coming together which he initiated. So it was, I don't know, it's one of those there's some old-time rugby
Don't want to be a
players.
pedant,
Yeah.
but isn't that what a headbutt is?
Well, to me, a headbutt is you know when you've been headbutted. And I don't want to sound like old-time like rugby players like, oh, that would never happen in my day, but like just going sort of nose to nose with somebody isn't like I to me a headbutt is that you plant your head on somebody, but you can't do that now. He gets sent off. He knows that he just got riled up by something off the ball. And at that point, you think, oh, 21-0, it's not, it's not a convincing scoreline necessarily. If Carmarthen score next, they could come back into this. And then we sort of get through to half time. And second half, we've just absolutely destroyed them. We've got 14 men. And if you had turned up at halftime, you would never have guessed that we were the side with a man down. We played like brutally physical stuff, made a couple of changes, brought, likes of Reece Barrett and Joe Cowell on, obviously first team and senior academy player. Um, just dominated them up front, and then the backs with their full complement still just took advantage of the space. So basically, the guys who come on did the work of the extra man. Carmarthen had absolutely zero answer. They did take a yellow card for a bit, so it was 14v14 for a 10-minute period. But yeah, I mean the scrum with Jason Harris there, even when we had seven men, because at the end, Sean Moore went off injured, so we were 13 for the last few minutes. We had a seven-man scrum with Jason Harris as one of the seven men, and we were still holding our own in the scrum.
I told you the other week, Jason Harris was wasted as a wing all these years.
I mean, I'm starting to believe it. Although the moment of the game does go to Jace because we sort of get to the edge on the right wing, kick it over the top with Tom Bowen. Their winger comes around and covers it and kicks it as if it's going into touch, sort of halfway. It bounces 5 or so yards in field and like rubber rolls towards the touchline where Jason Harris is waiting, and you can see in his eyes he doesn't want to keep this ball in, but he thinks, right, now I'm going to play for it because we're quite far ahead. Tries to control it with his foot, bounces up, whacks him straight in the face, and goes out into touch. He turns around to Josh Turnbull and Tom Haverfield laughing in his face. And one of the guys on Twitter said that Dan Fish was laughing out loud at that moment from the coaching stand. So fair play to Jay. So he was brilliant on the day. I mean, could list the whole rag squad as being superb, but I think special mention to Sean Moore before he went off, real captain's performance in the second row. Steph Emmanuel playing out of position at fly half. I think he got man of the match from the sponsors, but yeah, he looked absolutely class with his run past kick choice was superb, and just he's just a talented player. He can just pull off anything he wants to do really. And then Matty Young was excellent at a fullback as well, the academy prospect who I don't know if he like dipped his whole body in grease before the game started, but I mean, Carmarthen could literally not lay a hand on him. He was breaking tackles left, right, and centre. So Big 6 pointer, another one racked up. I think we're still top of the league now, although Newport have got their game in hand from being called off. But with Llandovery losing again, it's a bit of a wider open battle at the top this season, and racking up the points early and in your home games is going to be key. So good stuff for the Rags.
Yeah, excellent. Long may it continue. Who they is it week off this weekend or is it?
No, away at Swansea on Saturday afternoon. It clashes with the first team game. So if you don't fancy the derby, then head down to St Helens.
Excellent. So just going through a little bit of news, not a huge amount. It's mainly rumours and the fact that we're all that half the squad's buggered. Do you just want to quickly go through the squad up? So I understand it. Belcher's out for the seat for a few weeks. Evan Lloyd should be fine, but it's pain management. Azarati's not training, but should be fine, and Domachowski is okay. And that was just more of a management thing. So, any other
Yeah,
things we're missing there?
no, those are the big four from Friday's game against Glasgow. Yeah, Belcher. They mentioned December. I think we'd be doing well to see him this side of Christmas, probably with a fractured thumb. And fair play to him as well. I put a clip up on Twitter earlier. He breaks his thumb. I think Tuipulotu breaks it as he broke everything else pretty much on Friday night. Um, but fair play to Belcher. Yeah, I think he makes 3 tackles after he breaks his thumb, and including one that led to a turnover. So that's some effort from him. But yeah, he's done. Evan Lloyd, unlikely to see him this weekend, but should be back for the weekend after. And then, yeah, they're hoping Doma and Azza will be fit. Um, Better news is that James Botham, Thomas Young, and Rory Jennings are all back in contention this weekend. And I think particularly Thomas Young is great to see him back because there was at one point a suggestion he might not play in this block of fixtures. So he's come back a bit earlier, which is great. Um, and then the only other thing mentioned, which I don't think is a surprise to anyone, but they'd initially slapped before the end of this block of fixtures as a target for Josh Adams and Talupi Faletau to come back, and that's looking unlikely now. I don't think we'll want to rush them back before the international period, and judging by Jockey's comments, I think there was more a case of begging Gatland not to rush them back for internationals either. Just let them have November off, and we'll get them back in over December then.
Yeah, so getting back for the festive derbies and the European blocks.
Yeah.
That's when we need that extra level in class. I think for those two. Rumor mill wise is started grinding early this year. So Cardiff have been heavily linked with Joe Hawkins from Exeter. Also, although mainly linked with Dragons, also about Freddie Thomas, who's also out of contract, the Gloucester second row, who's having a decent start to the Premiership and a team that's only won one and three. Thoughts on both of those?
Yeah, I think the Thomas one is fairly expected. Like we were saying off air, then a Welsh qualified second row becomes available, and you can form a 4-man queue of the 4 Welsh sides. Really, we're always hunting for those sort of players. Is he the type of player that Cardiff need necessarily? I think he has looked good for Gloucester this year, but he is more of a 4-6 rather than an out and out tight head lock. We obviously have a fair few of those already, and likes of Seb and Teddy is somewhere between the two. I think he'll grow into being a tight head lock Teddy, but at the moment he's more of a your 4-6 type player. We've got Donald obviously as well who can fill in. So whether that's the player we should be going for, whether we should be looking at another overseas sort of huge second row like Josh McNally's obviously not going to be around for the long term. So that'll be for a recruitment decision. With Hawkins, interesting one. I think yeah, there's plenty of debate. I know people, some people see him as overrated, some see him as a really good player. I think ultimately with Hawkins, the question is more about for Cardiff what the future of Tinas De Beer and Rory Jennings is. Obviously, De Beer is out of contract at the end of this season. Jennings, don't know exactly how long he signed for, but some of the players that we brought in, some of the more experienced guys last summer were just on 1-year deals. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the future of those two guys are. We haven't got unlimited overseas or non-Welsh qualified spots. They're 2 non-Welsh qualified guys. De Beer, I think, has played well enough for us that he could attract attention from other clubs. If I was a French Pro D2 side and seeing sort of a fly half who's got a bit of an attacking game, good kicking, and also is a sort of ferocious defensive beast, I think I'd be pricking my ears up a bit. And at 27, 28, he's somewhere around there, isn't he? He'll have one more big contract maybe to go and get. So maybe not a massive surprise if he wasn't here next season, and then you could bring Hawkins in and either develop him as a 10 or move Ben more into the 10 jersey with Sheedy. But yeah, yeah, I think the Hawkins rumor is probably linked more to the future of current players rather than just bringing him in on top of what we've already got.
Yeah, I mean, it should be said in the article. It just says that they're looking at him, and there's no contract offers or anything yet. Which, let's be fair, all the sides are going to be looking for Welsh qualified players, because if they're Welsh qualified, you can usually sign them without any real issues. It's when you've got non-Welsh qualified that the PRB get a chance to say nah. I think that's all rumours wise. I mean, the more than 2 cents and with Hawkins is basically, yeah, if it's filling spots for players leaving, great. But if I was going to pick any Welsh qualified players from Exeter, it would definitely probably more that David Jenkins. Someone who's really good at running line out, hits rocks for fun, and gives us a little bit more grunt up front. Anyway, I feel like we're gonna try our best to avoid talking about this. So if you have enjoyed listening to the pod so far, please check out all our other stuff on the podcast, and please do like, subscribe, and review. We're pushing our way up to 1,000 YouTube subscribers, so we've just passed the 700 mark. So yeah, every little help. Feel free to leave comment below the video below if you are watching it on video, or trundle over there if you're only listening on audio. Listen to it for a minute, counts as a view. You can ignore the rest then. Anyway, so Friday night, Cardiff scored 36 points, which, considering last season we were averaging about 20 points, is blooming marvellous. The problem was we conceded 52. So, do you want to sort of before we start going into nitty gritty, do you want to just give your overviews of the game as you were actually there?
Yeah, it was an odd game. First, it was a game of four quarters really, rather than two halves to alter the cliche slightly, making an NFL version. First quarter, we're right in it. We're just about leading, and I think we probably on a different day should be having more points on the board at that point. We've had quite a lot of possession, quite a lot of territory. We've just struggled to break down Glasgow's defense in phase play, where they've blitzed heavily on the outside. They're keeping us quite narrow. We're struggling to get your Grady's, Winnets, uh, Harry Millards, etc., into space in the wide channels where the space is there and we can see it. We just can't quite figure out how to get there. And then the game turns in the second quarter. Glasgow score like 30 odd points or whatever, and take the game away from us at half time. And then the second half was, I mean, for the neutral, probably a great watch. From a Cardiff fan, it was just a bit bizarre, really. We came out sort of all guns blazing, nothing to lose, obviously trying to get back into it, and we get back within losing bonus point range twice. We also play the majority of the second half with 14 men because of the slightly bizarre rule around if where we've lost both hookers and both starting props to injury, we've had to go to uncontested scrums, which means we have to go down to 14 men because we might be faking it to go to uncontested scrums, despite the fact that the players are obviously injured and we're actually the dominant side in the set piece up until that point. So yeah, I think with 14 men, it's always going to be an uphill task. And Glasgow, as much as they occasionally led us into the game, just kept us at arm's reach, and were always able to score as soon as we'd scored essentially, and took it away a bit at the end as we tired. So yeah, odd game. And in terms of reacting to it, it's quite difficult to know where to pitch it. Because last season I think we'd have probably said, yeah, great effort. Boys really tried hard. Obviously, side like Glasgow, top team, reigning champions, they're always going to put a lot of points on you. But we stuck in there and got a losing bonus point. Could have had another one. But this season, I think there has to be a sort of expectation of improved performances and signs of progress. And so whilst we can say that there was good effort from the boys and there was a lot to like around the set piece and the physicality of the forwards, it also has to be pointed out that the level of defense in that second quarter of the game was way below par. Even last season, I think we would have counted it as below par, but we probably just wouldn't have mentioned it as much. But now it has to be something that you bring up and say that needs to improve. And then just the we need to get better at unpicking defenses that are going to pose different questions of us, like the top teams will. They're not all going to turn up like the lower half teams and be relatively easy to read and easy to pick apart. We're going to have to change things up on the fly, and players are going to have to come up with solutions on the field, not just wait for the coaches to tell them what to do off the field. So yeah, there's good and bad. Unfortunately, the bad won out on the day against a very good Glasgow team, but there there is still something there to build on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, looking at missed tackle stats, I mean, soon Tupelotu had an absolute field day in our midfield. So uh, the top for missed tackles was Sheedy, Cam Sheedy, Ben Thomas, and Tinas De Beer, all with three each. Although I do feel like when the halfbacks changed at half time, I do think that it De Beer may miss a few tackles, but it sort of almost felt like it wasn't as bad up until about, I'd say, after we draw within 4 points, and then all of a sudden you can just see Cardiff have no leg. Their legs have completely gone, and Glasgow running two very easy tries, to be frankly honest. For me, I think damage was done first half in that first half. I mean, 21 points would have equaled the Scarlets' record for the biggest lead overcome in the thing, and you could tell then with the way Domachowski and Nazarati off at half time. So your bench props aren't coming on at 40 minutes. Your halfbacks are coming on at foot, and it almost feels like if Cardiff hadn't have conceded, particularly that very last try at the end of half time, and sort of held out, you might have seen those subs coming on a bit later. And then when you do have those 20 minutes with 14 men, you don't feel as leggy. It's not too bad. So Carwyn messaged in on our group chat, and he was basically talking about the choice to go for goal to bring us within four. But what are your so he's pretty not happy with it. For me, it was sort of a case of we're down to 14, taking easy points when they're off seems to be the right thing. But I don't think, which in hindsight is great, but then looking at how we conceded so quickly afterwards, I think that was a probably more of a disappointing thing.
Yeah, it's a tricky decision, that one, because uh, there's one school of thought that says, you're down to 14, you've got no hookers, no reckon to throw into the line out. Um, and if you take the uncontested scrum, you have to put 8 men in, so you're down a back then if you're going to play off first phase ball. You could tap it, but we probably don't want to be going through that many phases against this Glasgow defence. So taking the point runner off, get the ball back and back yourself to go up, as we had been doing. We had broken them a couple of times despite going down to 14, was a fair choice. But then the other side is, we're down to 14, we got no hookers. Are we going to get back into this area of the field? Do we just go for it? Alan Lawrence has thrown one in and he's looked pretty good at it. And so do we just back it? So yeah, I think it's one of those that with hindsight, whichever one you do is probably the best. The other option is the best one, really. But I thought just on the way we came back in the second half, generally, that it was it was much improved, but it was also, there's not a lot you can take from that going forward because those circumstances are unlikely to be replicated. With Bevan and De Beer coming on and changing the halfbacks at half time and bringing on fresh front row as well with sort of half tactical, half injuries. Because I think you might have been able to push the props back out if you'd needed to, but they were both carrying knocks at that point, and they come on with nothing to lose there with 20 odd points down at half time. They don't need to worry about, whether it's worth taking a risk or not, because what's the worst we can happen? We can just still be losing by loads. I mean, it's not really the end of the world. So, yeah, they played well. I thought the pack were particularly impressive in the second half because we were pretty dominant over a pack with a lot of good quality players in it. But yeah, the damage, as I said, was done in that second quarter, and I think yeah, no, there's always the sort of reactions of suddenly Callum Sheedy's the worst defender to ever appear in a Cardiff jersey. But I think two things I'd say on that is that one, the previous week he'd done a very good job of shackling Johnny Williams, who, yes, Sione Tuipulotu is a distinct level above Johnny Williams, but he's not a small bloke. He's not a bad ball carrier, Johnny Williams, and Sheedy had dealt with him fine. And also, just on a side point to that one point, is that Tuipulotu will bump a lot better defenders than Callum Sheedy. I mean,
Well, he
there's a
bumped quite a lot of Cardiff players.
yeah, that's true as well. I mean, yeah, there's Lilo and Aled Davis and Belcher and I think it was Teddy at the start of the second half, all left in a wake, and there will be, significant high quality test level players left strewn by him this season, Northern Hemisphere, and probably on a Lions tour as well. So, um, and then the second thing I'd say is that I think there's a learning for Gethin Jenkins in there, in that obviously the first time he gets bumped, it's not catastrophic in terms of leading to the try comes at the next phase. We've recovered quite nicely. He's slowed him down at least, so it's not too bad. But once he's seen Tuipulotu has run straight over the top of Sheedy, the options should really have been either A, get Sheedy out of there and hide him on the wing or in the backfield, because you've got Ben Thomas, who's a better defender. You've got Lilo, who could step into 12, who's comfortable, has defended that 12 channel a lot. Ben Thomas has defended the 10 channel a lot. And then Grady can step in at the 13 channel, where he's defended a lot. You keep your wingers high and then drop Sheedy into the backfield with Winnett. Or you ask Dan Thomas just to childmind Sheedy, essentially, in that 10 channel and make it a two-man tackle and let Thomas do most of the physical work onto a Pelotu there. Unfortunately, we didn't do that, and obviously Tuipulotu was going to head straight back down Sheedy's channel the next time he got the ball, because why wouldn't you if you've just rolled straight over the top of him? And that's what leads to Tuipulotu's individual try then, which was the worst looking of them on the telly. So yeah, I don't I the sort of Sheedy's technique for both of them. He tries to go low, he tries to chop him. He's a little bit too passive probably, but it's not sort of Matthew Morgan. I'm not even going to be in the same postcode as you esque. It's more just a high quality player bumping a lighter player off, and yeah, the defense coach has got to think maybe my system shouldn't be having my 10 who is not the top defender on our team going up against Lions quality inside center.
Yeah, this was going to lead you on to think because yeah, James from Rapping Nos Produce pointed out to us after on the after the Zebra game, and just like there's a lot of one-up tackles being missed by Cardiff. Actually, if you have a look at them, it's not necessarily system. Some of them are pretty bad tackles. I mean, again, you have cases like seeing two plotter. He's just going to bump people. Um, do you think that's necessarily a system issue with Gethin Jenkins trying to employ, or is it just that we do have quite a few new players still in, so you have some players who are used to the system, others who aren't, and is that maybe trying to find the weak links of where people can cover each other?
Yeah, I think it's probably more the latter in that. I think missed tackles is always a stat that gets talked about a lot, and in terms of actual missed tackles numbers from week to week, we only missed two more tackles against Glasgow than we did against Scarlets, and I don't think anybody came out from the Scarlets game and really thought, oh, that was a poor defensive performance, was it? It was quite the opposite. The difference is that we missed them against Glasgow mostly inside our own territory, inside our own 10-meter line, and mostly against Sione Tuipulotu, who is going to punish you if he gets a bit of open space to run into. So, Gethin Jenkins' defensive system, to me, obviously we've only seen sort of bits and pieces of it really, because he can't have been able to fully implement it last year where he was only part time, and then this season it's been having to work around the fact that we have introduced quite a lot of new players. But the likelihood is it's going to be highly, and from what we've seen so far, it seems to prove this point, is that it's going to be highly Sean Edwards influenced. He spent most of his career under Sean, whether it was obviously a lot with Wales, but even when Sean was doing part-time consultancy work for Cardiff in the last couple of years of Gethin's career. And Sean Edwards' defenses do miss a lot of tackles. Ultimately, the line speed and the pressure that he wants to bring means that sometimes you will miss tackles, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because if you're slowing somebody down, or if you're making them think twice about playing too quickly into the wide channels, that's the sort of psychological games that he likes to play with the opposition. So Cardiff's defense, and I thought in second half it did this a lot better. It did bring a lot of line speed, it did bring a lot of intensity, but it does ask sometimes players to make one-on-one tackles which they're not too comfortable with, and the system then should be able to cover that, and that's what will develop with the over the next few weeks as players bed in and get used to it, is that it won't matter so much if Sheedy does miss that one-up tackle, because the forward should be working around from the line out to cover it, or the backfield should be able to come across and where the player hopefully has had their run slowed down slightly, they should be easier to tackle there, and it scrambles quite well and reorganizes quickly and then brings the pressure again. So, yeah, I think I'm not massively concerned by any individual within the defense or with the defensive system at the moment. It's just a case of, it was an almost perfect storm of the system not being fully in and going up against a top quality player on Friday, and I think Gethin is a smart enough rugby bloke to be able to fix that quite quickly.
Yeah, excellent. One more thing I do want to talk about the game is the Dan Thomas try, because I'll be honest, whether it's legal or not, the amount of piss that's been on Royal and Boyle from Glasgow fans has just made me think this is try of the season. And big shout out to James Stafford, or also to AKA the East Terrace. Him what does the good rugby picture books. It's declaring it try of the season, and just watching just the complete meltdown has been funny. Um,
And it's definitely
for
not legal, by the way. Just that I'm 90% sure it's 100% illegal, which doesn't really make sense. But there's no way you can just push a bloke. Surely not.
Well, I mean, loads of people like quoting about saying, "Oh, if you're making a genuine attempt to tackle, you've got to wrap your arms and grab hold of things." Like, well, what about tap tackles then? And
Yeah,
then and
that's a
then
fair
they
point.
just don't respond. It's like, well, a tap tackle is a perfectly acceptable tackle.
Is that
I mean,
the
the
upper
one thing I
body
do
tap
like is
tackle?
they said is if you kick the ball ahead and someone gets in your way and you're trying to get to the ball, you can push them out the way.
Yeah.
And he's dropped the ball.
It's just
Right, he's dropped the ball for a kick, but
yeah, I do think there should be
also
just a
the other
law at
thing
the
is it's a
bottom.
scrum half and they deserve it.
Well, yeah, there should be a law at the bottom which just says if it's fucking funny, then it's allowed to stand, isn't it?
Proper reffing on vibes rules, full on Roman Platt or Tony Spreadbury sort of thing, or whoever the SA ref on debut was.
Yes,
Maybe
yeah.
that's the sort of thing that's just flies in the Curry Cup. I don't know, but
It
it
was
is
a bit
fun.
of a shambolic refereeing performance overall. I thought not for or against Cardiff, but the breakdown
It,
was an absolute free for all.
it was genuinely funny. It was just good. Glad we did speak about it on rap, and someone was whilst in the middle of league trying to have a serious conversation about the role of TMOs and touch structures, and I went, it's just funny sometimes. So the ref just goes, oh, I don't care, just do what you want.
Yeah, it was that. I mean, there was the amount of times that sort of the ball was either in or out of a ruck, and he just sort of just held his arms out really as everybody ran around
Yeah,
the
go for it.
outside of it. Yeah, just I mean, there's one in the second half where Bevan has gone into the ruck and the ball is clearly between his legs as he's the back foot, and the Glasgow players run round and he's just gone, yeah, play on. I mean, the ball is clearly still in the ruck, and Dan Thomas got away with one. As well, slapping the ball down, which I mean, he looked miles offside for that as well. So yeah, I don't really know what that guy was up to. I don't know like why they're where the referees have all gone in the URC. We seem to be getting all sorts of random referees at the moment, but like didn't we? Wasn't it a South African guy who got flown in for the Cardiff Scarlets game as well? Like, what?
Yeah,
Surely
yeah.
there's
I
a
think we've had two refs on debut
yeah,
this
well, like
so far.
surely there's a Welsh referee who can referee a Welsh derby. I don't know why we're
Well,
flying South
well.
African
Speaking
lads in for
speaking
that.
of, I know Lee's very happy with the referee for the upcoming game.
Oh, I don't. Is it
It's
is it is it a
oh,
Welsh
Craig
guy?
Evans. I don't know why
Oh, Craig
my
Evans. Oh,
brain
okay.
took. Yeah, I was like,
Forgot about him.
I think it's great ref. The problem
Yeah,
is,
that's
is
all
that
right.
he knows exactly all the shit we get up to, so he pings us
Yeah,
for it.
that's true. That's true.
But I think he's fantastic technical referee. But the problem is you just can't get away with bullshit, uh, which is what I think he wasn't too happy with. So moving on, unless there's anything else you want to talk about for Glasgow game.
No, I think anything else now would feed into the Scarlets game really around selection and performances and stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah, so if we start on the Scots game, so Turks are coming back for vengeance after we beat them on their patch. They'll be hurting because another close defeat for them out in against Connacht at Park Scarlets. Game probably they should have won.
mm.
But more now I've actually had a chance to watch it. They can be hurting, and I think they're going to look a lot better than they did the last sort of 60 odd minutes against us.
Yeah, I think obviously they're winless now, which they'll want to rectify that because I think they've got a couple of tough fixtures after us as well. They were better against Connacht than they were against us last weekend, definitely, but they're still I obviously they've had quite a similar sort of 15 months to us, really, haven't they, from the start of last season in terms of results? But the general feel of the Scarlets is a lot different from us. I mean, we are considerably more positive than they are. You look on Twitter after they lost on Friday night, and it's mostly sort of question marks about how long Peel's got left, really, as they're in charge down there. But yeah, it'll be a very different game this one than the one we saw 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks will make a lot of difference. It'll make a difference in terms of the weather. I think it's not going to be as good as it was on that evening at Park Scarlets, the pitch. And I think the squads will look quite different as well. Scott, we've both got players back. We've had one or two out injured in the meantime. Lousy will make a big difference. He always enjoys playing against us. Seems to save a good game for a derby. Their back row will be a little bit more balanced now that sort of Dan Davis is back. I think they played Davis and McLeod last week, went from no open sides to two open sides in a week. So that balance will give them a bit more. And obviously, guys like Davis and McLeod have got the bit more game time under their belt. They'll be a bit fitter. And I think the question mark for them will be whether they can, turn any sort of pressure and possession into points, because that's where they've struggled at times. Really, is that um, I get on paper they look a lot better than they are, but they're performing probably less than the sum of their parts. I would say they're not getting over the gain line regularly. They're not giving guys like Costello and Lloyd the platform to play, and that's impacting their confidence as well. You look at somebody like Costello, and he's looking a sort of shadow of the player that he really should have been at this point of his development, and injuries haven't helped that, but just a sort of lack of belief in himself, and that resonates around the team, I think. For Cardiff, we'll it'd be interesting to see what we do team selection wise. We've obviously been pretty similar for the first 3 weeks of the season. A couple of guys are looking a bit beat up. They'll be coming into the game at less than 100%. But as we mentioned in the injury bit, we've got a few guys coming back into the back row. So um, I think it'll be a lot tetchier of a game than the one was 2 weeks ago. There's quite a lot of open attacking periods in that game at Park Scarlets. I think there'll be more kick in, more set pieces on Saturday, and whoever, as usual, really it'll still come down to which type five comes out on top, as it usually does in Cardiff Scarlets. But that'll be a really intensified battle, whereas we managed to take the battle slightly away from there down west. But yeah, I think it'll be all eyes on that Type 5 duo when it comes around to this Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely. So I said we've sort of gone through key battles. According to the Scout squad, it's an easy 5 points to them again. So I hope someone from the Cardiff dressing rooms put some of those quotes up just to stick on the wall. In terms of team selection, I think hookers a bit. I mean, we could put the hookers in now because we've only got two.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll probably look at Evan Daniel starting and was it Dav Hughes
That views, yeah. Which
and
isn't a bad
bench.
thing because we do like to put players in against former teams, and they do seem to generally play quite well then as well. So that's
Yeah,
no, but I think with team selection generally, just before going into specific positions, there's sort of two things to consider. I think first is just how much weight you put on the Glasgow performance. And, after the game, there was a lot of, particularly around the half, like, well, Ellis and De Beer have to start next week. I don't think that's necessarily true. So, as I said about the conditions of the game in that second half, they will not be able to play from the start against the Scarlets in the way that they did coming out in the second half against Glasgow. You know, you just if you do that, you'll end up pretty much like we did at Park Scarlets with two early tries from where you've tried something that hasn't quite come off and you've given up easy ball and conceded points. And we got back into that one, but we're not going to be able to overcome those deficits all the time. So I think there are legitimate reasons, and that leads into my second point then around team selection is that a lot of guys have played more than 200 minutes so far this season, of the available 240, and we have two big games after this to round off the fixture block away at Edinburgh and then home to Ulster. Um, there's unlikely to be many more of the current injured players back after this weekend. Evan Lloyd is maybe missed this weekend, so he'll be available again. But the other guys are long to, obviously we've mentioned Falatown Adams, the likes of Cabango, Belcher, Gwilym Bradley. These guys are all long-term absentees who we're not going to get back in a hurry. So there's not a huge amount of wiggle room for Sherritt in terms of rotation. So he's going to have to be clever, but. Um, so in some positions, whether you can mix things up slightly or not, or whether we'd say, I guess the question is, do you slowly rotate over 3 games, or do you sort of say, right, we're going to go hard at the Scarlets at home, maybe send a change side to Edinburgh and almost not concede that one, but say more, maybe more positive
Here's
way
your
of
chance to
looking at
prove a
it.
point.
Yeah, and a more positive way of saying we're targeting the home games, of saying we're going to try and beat Scarlets, we're going to try and beat Ulster, and then Edinburgh is where you make more wholesale changes to give guys a chance to prove the point in a game where away you're not expecting necessarily to get a win on the road, and if we're going to pick up more wins than we did last season, then the home games is where it's going to be. So that's that's the sort of wider context behind the whole team selection. And we'll get into specific positions now, but yeah, that frames the whole thing. I don't think it's as easy as just saying it's all the same team except Bevan and De Beer start at 10, 9 and 10, and because they did really well last week, and that's how we're going to go. I think there has to be wider context given to each one when we go through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, McNally and Teddy have played a lot of minutes together. I
Hmm.
know jockeys swaps. They seem to alternate which one he takes off to
Yeah.
bring Thornton onto, which is quite a good way of balancing that. Balancing the three of them minutes whilst we've only got three out and out second rows fit and available. I think Seb's back.
There's been no
Or
mention of
he?
Seb, but he was. I think last week they had said that he was hoped to be back for this week, and then they just haven't spoken about him this week. So I don't know whether he is or isn't, to be honest.
Yeah, because wasn't sure where the line blurred between his ban and his and a niggle
Oh yeah, he's
came
definitely
from, but
back
yeah,
from that.
yeah, yeah. So I
I,
said for the Scots game, getting I'm not going to be there. It's going to be is it the Saturday afternoon kickoff that everyone always seems to want, apart from if like me, you're like, I was going to play rugby that weekend. Fucker, now I've got to find out the score when I come off. Uh, anyway, assuming the game's on anyway. Joy's the second team rugby from Wales. Uh not too much I want to say left for this group. It's not like we've had a lot of the build up. We've had basically one extra game each on the Scarlets. I don't see much changing between the way both teams want to play with the ball. I think it is just gonna be a case of are Cardiff gonna have enough? How much of the Cardiff boys got on their legs? How much do we need some fresh legs in there? And then how easily are they going to integrate, or is it going to be a bit more sloppy like the Zebra game was? So unless you got anything else preview wise for that, should we go into selection?
yeah, let's get into it.
Right, so front row has said it's probably Evan Daniel at hooker. Are we gonna bring Edburn and Littrick off the bench, or do you want to see say maybe a Daniel Southwell or if Domachowski's ready to go?
Yeah, I think if they're able to play, I think you have to stick with Domachowski and Azarati just because they are, our top props. I think I'd have no qualms with Littrick going in. I think he's been actually quite impressive in his replacement
Yeah,
appearances this season. He looks like he's taken on a new dimension in terms of sort of the physicality of his carrying. We're using him ball in hand quite a lot more when he does come off the bench, and Yeah, his scrummaging is he was a pretty good scrummager to start with, to be fair to him, as somebody who served an apprenticeship under Adam Jones is likely to be. But yeah, I think I'd stick with the same prop setup as last weekend potentially, unless you've got
And then maybe swapping them around for following week, I'm guessing.
yeah, and then having like I don't think I'd even go as far to say maybe just leave Doma and Azza at home, but then I'd give them a weekend off in the Edinburgh trip. But yeah, I think I'd try and milk the last bit out of them this weekend. But I think also be prepared to make those props changes slightly earlier than we have been as well. Obviously, it was forced on half time last week, but other than that, we've been sort of pushing towards the 60-minute mark a little bit. I think I'd be looking at maybe 50, 55 minutes this weekend.
Yeah. If Domo isn't available, well, I think Listrick comes in if Azarati's not quite right. If Domo's not in, would you bring Danny Southworth in just to sort of have a sit almost like for like play, or would you bring Ed Byrne in?
No, I think I'd start Ed, just experience wise, particularly with uh, Evan Daniel going in there, a hooker, obviously great player, like lots of potential. But I think with Litterick not being too experienced either, I think I'd want a more experienced head going in alongside those guys and have Southworth then just say, look, mate, you got 25 minutes off the bench, go and just empty the tank basically and cause as much havoc as you can.
All right, moving on to the second row. Do you think we'll just keep the same as we have been? So
Yeah,
McNally and Teddy, and then Thornton comes off the bench for one of them
yeah,
after
if
60
Seb
some
is
minutes.
available, I think there would be a temptation there to nudge Seb above Thornton potentially as the bench option. But like uh, as we'll get onto with Lilo as well with the older guys, I don't know exactly how much legs McNally has got to go every week, but if he is able to, we do desperately need him because he's basically become
I
integral to
think he
that pack
basically,
already.
I think he basically just went all the time at Bath. I vaguely remember
Yeah,
when he was there.
if he can, then
So
great. I will be wringing the last drops of energy out of him because he is. If we're going to contain, especially with Lousy coming back for Scarlets, he is going to be a key guy on Saturday.
yeah. See, back row then. So because I don't think Mann's back, both of them still out.
No,
So I,
Botham's
I
back.
think
Botham's back.
both back.
Yeah,
Would you
so
make the change there at six and bring both of them on?
back
Either at six or
back was really tough this week. Botham, Donald, Thomas, Dan Thomas, and then Thomas Young. It's going to be confusing just calling them Thomas. And
yeah.
I'm not really sure which one's which, but Young and Thomas on the open side, and then you got Lawrence and Big Mac then at eight. If as is reported, all of those are fit and available. I mean, there's a number of very good back row combinations there. I what would I be tempted to do? Like, it's you can't really like advocate dropping any of the guys from last week necessarily. I thought Donald had his best performance of the season so far, carrying and tackle wise, got the try as well. He was really good. Brings that good mix of physicality and athleticism.
And
Obviously,
the line out option.
And line at option. Dan Thomas has been probably the standout player across the first 3 weeks, and then a couple of handling errors from Big Al last week, but other than that,
I'd say more credit than anything,
yeah,
especially with some of
absolutely.
those line out darts.
The lineup was great, but his carrying has been really impressive. I can't
Hmm.
remember what the stat was. I think he's in the top five from successful carries in the URC across the first 3 rounds of the season, and
Yeah.
he didn't even start week one.
Behind
So
Ben Thomas.
yeah, so yeah, Mac did look good off the bench. But I'm sort of tempted to say, well, if he looked good off the bench and Lawrence looked good starting, to maybe keep it that way round if that's working. It's going to be difficult if Thomas Young is available. It's difficult not to bring him back in. But yeah,
I think for me, who do you think would make better impact off the bench? Thomas
that's
Young.
that's the question. Yeah, and Young
So for
is
me, I'd say Thomas Young's got the potential to have that extra impact, and it
yeah,
almost changes the dynamic of what the Scots have been playing against.
and I maybe obviously we'll get into this a bit later, but there could be a 6-2 option for Cardiff this weekend
I mean,
because
we're also very low on backs as well, so
yes,
that might be useful.
we're a bit short there, and I think if it does become a bit more of a scrap, that introducing six fresh forwards might give us a bit of extra dimension in that last half hour. So yeah, I'm almost tempted to say, but I don't know which one of those six even misses out necessarily because it's difficult to leave both of them out. It's difficult to leave Young out. Mac looked good off the bench, and the starting guys deserve their spots. Yeah, I
Because I'd have argued maybe bringing someone else in at six and having Donald on the bench again for that 6-2. Because if Jockey decides what we need is the extra room in the engine room, then he can go in there fresh and he's not having done 60 minutes of running around chopping people down and busting a gut carrying.
yeah, I think maybe a slight cop out answer says that you know you give Young an extra week off potentially if it's only like not definite now that he's available. You don't want to rush him back too early. It was a nasty bicep tear, like maybe say, look, we don't necessarily need you for this weekend. We keep with the same back row. We go 6-2 and bring both them onto the bench and go with that.
And it
That's
gives you better cover as well then,
yeah,
because both of them will cover six and
that's
seven depending on how the game's going.
that's the only way I can think to really come up with an answer because they are. I mean, it is such good back row options, and there is literally no bad decisions there. But yeah, I think that's my cop out way around it is
Yeah.
to go
So I
six
think
two and rest Young.
I think we'll go with. So I think we're both thinking then Ben, Dan, and Al
Yeah,
as our starting back row. Scrum half. Despite all the talk about not changing halfbacks, would you like to
yeah.
see a Bevan come in, or would you like to see Allen and Sheedy have a chance to redeem themselves? For me, I'm probably leaning more towards Sheedy starting
I think, and
again,
you know,
given the chance again.
having said that about there is still legitimate points to be made for changing the halfbacks. I just saying that it's not you can't purely say it off. Oh, they played well in the second half last week, but there are points around that these guys have started 3 games so far. They do need a rest at some point. But then the sort of flip side to that is it was Aled and Sheedy that were instrumental in doing a job on the Scarlets 2 weeks ago. But yeah, I didn't, Bevan looked a little rusty with some of his right hand passing on Friday, but he did bring good energy off the bench. I think I think I'd be tempted by Bevan and Sheedy is probably what I would be tempted by because the other thing I thought after Friday was that probably where our fly halves are best used now is that Sheedy is more your where you're going to be on the front foot a little bit more, where you're going to have more of the possession and territory. He is, the more creative, goes to the line, makes things happen a bit more. And then De Beer maybe is your 10 for Edinburgh away and for Ulster at home, where the other team is going to be a bit bigger, a bit physical, or you're not going to see as much of the ball. And so he's defensively a bit more solid. He's got a good enough kicking game. He's good off the tee. Will get you those points. So maybe my thinking is you say to Sheedy, you've got another chance to come back in and start here in a Welsh derby. Guessing that the Welsh coaches will be watching, prove your point, and then next 2 weeks we'll probably go with De Beer to start in games where we're going to need to be a little bit more tactical, a little bit more defense, smarter without the ball, and go for that. But I'm open to be overruled on that.
I quite like the logic, and for me as well, I think with the scrum half, so it'd be nice to see Bevan. So I think I'd like to see Bevan up against Gareth Davis again.
Mm.
He's had a couple of tricky goings together with him, and then having Ali Davis coming on for the at the same time Scarlets are going to they might not because they didn't last week use their who's the scrum half they've got been
Evan
using
Jones, isn't it?
Evan Jones. I feel like Ali Davis would win the battle there, and actually having him to calm heads down, particularly if we do end up in a skip situation, having someone like him coming on later, because Ali Davis does seem to me the sort of nine who can sit on the bench, see how a game's unfold, and go right. This is what needs to be done. Whereas I feel like when Bevan comes off the bench, it's right tempo.
Yeah, yeah.
It might not be the answer, but it's the one that works. Him and with our with our 6-2, maybe means that we don't see De Beer this week,
Yeah,
perhaps.
it would be a little bit harsh on him because he did bring stuff less. His physical, his carrying work, he got through a good amount of work, but he actually didn't touch the ball a massive amount on from first receiver. He's played the pass through to Grady, but most of the work was done with the dummy runners outside him for that Big Mac try. He's made one nice break early in the second half, and
And
he's
good
kicked
bouncing off as
nicely.
well.
Yeah, he's bounced Duncan Weir and he's kicked nicely off the tee, but he didn't. it was mostly the sort of the forwards picking up the gauntlet in the second half, so he didn't have to do a huge amount. But yeah, I'd be I'd be more than happy with him sitting this weekend and then starting the next two.
Oh, yeah, so coming on to centres, I mean, I think Ben Thomas starts 12 again.
Yeah, we just pencil pen his name in now, permanent marker.
Yeah, I said, and then you've got your 10 cover as well.
Yeah, yeah.
The big question mark for me is Ray. Is he was he a bit banged up with that,
I feel
or
like
do you?
we're gonna have this conversation every week of surely he can't play again, and then he just sort of
And then
will,
he
and he'll
does,
be
becomes
class.
man of the match.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, yeah, I had the same thought of like he's like every year, every week I'm going to say he's at a higher age until we get into like nine figures worth of age as well. But he's very old. He every week he looks like he's got an injury which he'll never come back from, and then he turns up the next week and is unbelievably class again. So if he's fit, he plays. I think ultimately,
Yeah,
like
I said because I think because really all we've got the only option we've got is Grady at 13. Really, I
yeah.
know Millard could step in there,
Mm.
and then I think we've agreed that we've mentioned this on the pod. Ray isn't really the sort of guy you want off the bench. He's the guy you start, and even if
Yeah,
he only gives you 30 minutes
yeah.
at the start, then you bring Grady in.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think yeah, if we assume he's available, I haven't heard otherwise, so he probably does start. But yeah, maybe he gets gradually earlier, and he's maybe somebody else as well who doesn't go to Edinburgh potentially if that's a
Yeah,
week off he could
I
have.
think that's a fair one there. And people like Gray Mason are young enough that they can probably deal with a
Yeah,
few more extra minutes,
yeah,
particularly in their backs. Um, I think how, following your logic, Harry Millard was up for press, so I'm
yeah.
guessing it'll be him and Grady starting on wings, or would you like to see Gabe come in and Grady maybe being that?
No, I'd stick with back three. Yeah,
Yeah,
when it's in the same boat as Ben Thomas, really, of being permanent marketed in at 15 at the moment. So,
yeah,
and yeah, Grady will almost certainly start, and Millard's done press, which is usually the giveaway. So, yeah, I don't see a back three change. And um, Gabe probably could do with a start at some point. I thought he looked a little bit rusty off the bench as
okay.
well
Again,
last time.
maybe that's the one for Edinburgh then.
Yeah, if Grady does move inside, then Gabe's the obvious right winger to start away at Edinburgh. Then.
Right. So on the bench, so we've always said Dav Hughes.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing if Doma and Azrati are fit, we're looking at Ed and Reese Liftrick
Yeah.
again. If not, it's going to
Otherwise,
be Southworth and
Davis King.
David King. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who I'm guessing he's been travelling reserve a lot because you've not really seen him. Right. It
Uh,
almost feels like he could do with being playing for the Rags. So at least even if it is a step up, he's having the game time.
I think the
He's getting the pressure and the scrimmaging.
I think the slight problem is that if he plays, oh, the Rags have obviously clashed with the first. There's not been opportunities to do both over
Yeah.
the weekend. I wonder if they're not quite ready to put Joe Cowell in as travelling reserve yet in case something happened. They
Mhm.
don't want him to go and have
Yeah.
to tight head scrimmage at in the first team just yet, and they want him to play a bit more for the Rags. So, yeah, but yeah, it would be handy if he could get some game time at some point for the Rags. I agree.
Yeah. Thornton's our out and out second row cover, I'm guessing,
Well, Thornton
because we haven't heard
slash
from Seb
Seb.
Davis.
Yeah, so yeah, Thornton is the guy unless Seb is fit.
Yeah. And then so our back row cover, we're going with both of them and Big Mac.
Yes,
Yeah.
which is very impressive back row cover.
Yeah, I mean that basically covers everything. And then I've got Aled Davis as our bench nine, and then for the 23 jersey, then I'm gonna go with probably Jennings because you get that cover.
Or Hamer Webb.
I suppose
Uh,
yeah, Hamer Webb because then everyone moves in.
yeah, I think Hamer Webb's probably the one I would go for. Yeah, because you could have Grady at 13. Webb can play full back if desperately needed. The other thing I was trying to think is whether you could do 6-2 with De Beer there and uh,
I mean, he did play 12. He did have a stint at 12 in the preseason.
yeah, I think you could
But
put
my
him
worry is if it's 13 that needs cover. I suppose you could use Ben Thomas to fullback
win it to
and
the
De Beer
wing
to
would be
12.
my thinking, but I think that's probably just a bit too much reshuffling. Is probably
I was
safer
thinking
just
like
to go Hamer
if it
Webb,
was
but
yeah.
you could theoretically do it with De Beer. But yeah, I would probably play it safer and
Yeah,
go with Hamer.
yeah. I think because we've got 10, and if Rory Jennings is fit and
Yeah,
he is an option, you're like, well, we're not short on people who can cover in 10 in the and you're looking at probably Sheedy playing the full 80.
yeah. And when I post that on Twitter, I know exactly the reaction will be, well, where's De Beer? Because there will be a lot of people who would want him to start this weekend. And
Yeah, and we'll say, listen to the pod.
yeah, and
He's he's due for he's going to have two full 80 minutes against Edinburgh and Ulster.
it's possible that he does the that Sherritt goes 5-3 and rests Sheedy off the bench and brings De Beer in to start. But yeah, I think I'd like to see him back Sheedy this week and give him another chance in front of, as I said, the Welsh coaches in a Welsh derby to really bounce back and put his hand in the ring for autumn internationals.
Yeah, I agree. I think we agreed we sort of fell into this sort of thing last season that actually I think the 6-2 works well for us
Mm,
because we do have the versatility in the back line now. We
yeah.
can do a little bit of shuffling, especially if it's only like one in or one out, sort of moving around. Yeah, so I think we're happy with that. I'll put the final one. Are you going to assume Doma and Azarati are free? Jockey seems fairly confident that they
Yeah,
are.
I don't think he'd have mentioned it if they weren't. So he seemed quite upbeat to me in the press conference stuff that they club have put out. So yeah, I'm pretty happy that they will be.
All right, so predictions. What do you think of the game? So I said very confidently on Rat after saying, "Oh, it's a very close game. I'm not sure, we'll be able to stand up to it physically." Cardiff by 8.
um, yeah, I'll go Cardiff as well because yeah, I think we probably have to be slight favourites at home and it'll be another tense game, but I'll go Cardiff by 5, I think. Not as clear cut as yourself, but yeah, I do think it's also a game that there's probably a bit of pressure on us in that we should be aiming to win home derbies now. Like that's where we can get wins, and we've had games so far this season where there's been a bit of pressure on us, and like the Zebra one, for example, and we haven't performed as well as we can, and a little bit in Glasgow as well. It wasn't pressure, but I think there was slightly more expectation on that one than there has been previously. But I'd like to think we'll be able to stand up to that and produce a win.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I was looking at the table and sort of where we've gained or lost points, and we're still. I mean, we got 1 point from Glasgow last season. We got 1 point this season. We're already in the plus with Zebra and Scarlets with a lot, turning a loss and a draw into 2 bonus point wins. I mean, that is one thing as well. Last season we struggled to score more than two maybe three tries, and scored. We've got a try bonus point in every game so far. So I think that's a testament to how much better the attack's running.
And a set piece as well. Having a
Yeah, set
bit like
piece. And,
Cornel Van Zyl is obviously doing some very good work around there, and it's given us a much better platform to play off.
that's absolutely. Anything else you want to discuss? Any blogs you want to plug, particularly,
Uh,
or
the only other thing to bring up right at the end for the hardcore people who are maybe into the politics of Welsh rugby is just to mention briefly that there was the article that Steph Thomas done from Wales Online in the week about a potential new deal to be struck by the WRU and the four teams, whereby the WRU take a 20% stake in each Welsh club in return for them sort of wiping out the debt which they took on in the first place during COVID and sort of lumbered onto us. Um, like these things come out semi-regularly about the WRU taking stakes or what harebrained scheme they've come up with to put in front of PRB, and there'll be multiple different ways that they're looking at doing this deal. So it's far from certain, but there was a suggestion that two teams had agreed to it. I'd be very, very surprised if Cardiff's one of those teams. And just in terms of the way the company works, for them to take 20% of it would be difficult to do with the Articles of Association. They'd have to call an EGM. We've obviously had new owners very recently, and they've taken over 80% of the shares. So at least some of the shares would have to come from them. Probably all, because I can't imagine any of the minority shareholders who are generally Cardiff supporters would be queuing up to sell their shares to the WRU. And then just on the deal as a whole, to, each club obviously has their equal share of the debt, and then they're buying 20% of each club, which means they're valuing all four clubs at the same, which doesn't make sense to me either because Cardiff and the Scarlets, with their much greater revenue than the Ospreys and the Dragons, would be worth assets and so forth would be worth more than those two sides as well. So there would be a
Also
fairness
taking care
element
of
to that.
Dragons own they own all the bits of Dave Parade and everything, so they get the
Yeah,
revenue from county. So that's
and
it all sort of makes sense.
the Dragons were effectively sold by the WRU for £0 just a couple of months ago, and now they were saying that we value 20% of your business at £3.5 million or whatever it is. So yeah, I think just to touch on it, that I don't think there's any immediate concern around that. But if it was to happen, it would be an absolute diabolical set of circumstances, and I suspect would end quite a lot of people's support of the club.
Yeah, well, I said, I mean, you yourself have posted out, we as a podcast all agreed the same thing with that. We just don't, we the whole thing with Cardiff ever since we got into the legalization is we've been our own standalone thing. Um, yeah, I've been part totally up to WRU's people joking saying, oh, no jockey has to play Ben at 10 and things like that. And it's just a bit thing. I'm all for having alignment between national team and the club system, but it's got to be very much more back and forth as opposed to being dictated from. Because
Absolutely.
let's be fair, as a nation, we're not the best at being told what to do. It's not really in our psyche. Yeah, I think just a quick thing on Wales women is gonna we're not planning on doing a Wales women pod this week, so I'll air my grievances here. They're fucking wank. It's getting depressing. Part of the reason we're not doing it is because we're getting to a point where there's nothing new to say, and I'm reiterating what I said last week. I genuinely do think Japan women, the Sakura 15 will probably beat Wales, especially with the team that's out. Looks quite slow and inspiring, particularly in the midfield. Kaylee Powell having her first start at 10, as far as I can tell, ever. She's covered on games. She's a world class fullback, which way she should really be playing. Obviously, the situation dictated with Cleaky George, but yeah, that game was just the game against Italy was just very uninspiring. Like, just yeah, awful. I don't know if you caught it and what your thoughts are.
I only saw the highlights, but I think my general, I think I've gained a new person of who should be taking a lot of flack for this, and it's Sean Connor, the attack coach. I wonder what
Mm.
he does really, like, because Wales had so much ball against Italy and had quite a lot of ball against Australia, particularly in the first half as well, and. I mean, there's just absolutely no cutting edge to that attack at all. It is just, I don't like whatever the level above blunt is. That's where Wales women are at the moment. It is that I think if I was Johan, I'd be use like I don't know, I wouldn't even say using him as a scapegoat, but that would be the major change that I'd make after this autumn because like. I don't really know anything about the Japan women's team. I don't know how likely a win is or isn't on Friday. But like, if whatever happens, I don't necessarily see a situation where they do actually get rid of Cunningham after this one. I just think he stays, but I think certainly that he can secure his own job by saying, "Look, we've actually done quite well in X, Y, and Z part of the game. Ultimately, we just can't score. So my change is going to be I'm changing the attack coach, and then hopefully we'll start scoring again because." The other obviously the element of that is that a lot of these players, I think it was yourself, Harley, said it on this pod last week. They played together for Gloucester Hartpury, and then like they look like they've just met when they walk into Wales camp. It's really bizarre. And that's got to be a coaching issue because they are the same players that are playing for Gloucester Harbour every week. So yeah, think that would be the person who would potentially be falling on their sword if I was the WRU or Johan Cunningham is pointing a finger at the attack coach.
Just a little bit of word on Japan, and basically the one thing I thought we might have against them is the forward dominance, but having seen how they played against both Scotland and South Africa, they holding up mauls, and they were very much in the physical battle. And the problem with Wales is we don't really have much else. Like if we can't just give it to Cecilia and Gwynn Purse from 5 meters out, we're a bit struggling. And then Japan are probably the one of the best handling sides in WXV across all three tiers. it's just such good, fast, crisp handling. It puts a lot of men's teams to shame, to be honest. Um, and Wales are really bad at outside outside defence. It's gotten better over the last few games, but I mean that Wallaroos game showed just how far we still got to go, and I'm very worried about this one. I could see Japan running, maybe not racking up a cricket score, but I can see them causing us lots of problems. Personally, I do think the whole team needs to go out. My bigger problem is I don't know who would replace them.
Yeah, that's the
Really,
problem. Yeah.
that's the thing. I mean, I don't think Sean Lynn's gonna see the shit show that is the WI and think I'm gonna leave this job at Gloucester Hartbury where I don't think he needs to coach them anymore. They're just winning. Yeah, absolutely fantastic team. Great game on the weekend as well. Yeah, I think that's everything for the week. As ever, please do like, subscribe, pod, send comments. We're at Cardiff Rugby Life. So I kept Cardiff Rugby Web, isn't it, on your Twitter handle?
Yeah,
But
that's it.
yeah,
Yeah.
at Worthy Harley. I'm also on Blue Sky if you really want to go on to something new and cutting edge to message us. For any comments, thoughts. And we shall leave it there. So thank you all for listening. Thank you, Dan.
Cheers.
Ta